This lesson is factor by grouping. Now when you're going to factor, you always look for the greatest common factor, and if there is none in every term, and your polynomial has 4 or more terms, you might want to consider factor by grouping. Strategy is first group the first 2 terms, then the second 2 terms. If that doesn't work, sometimes you need to rearrange the terms of the polynomial. So to begin with the first example, let's look at the first 2 terms and then the second 2 terms. Look for the greatest common factor in the first 2 terms, and that happens to be a y. So factoring out the y, what's left over? Well, you're going to have y minus 2. Looking at the next 2 terms, your xy minus 2x, the greatest common factor is a positive x. And when you factor the positive x out, you're left with y minus 2. Now you can see in red, the factor y minus 2 is common to the 2 terms, because here are our 2 terms. What's common? The y minus 2. So you're going to factor out y minus 2, and then what do you have left? Y plus x. And you can always check your answer by foiling. All right, next example, again, 4 terms. Is there a greatest common factor in all 4 of those terms? No, there's not. So let's factor by grouping, and again, we'll look at the first 2 terms, then we'll look at the second 2 terms. Greatest common factor in the first 2 terms is an x. What's left over? An x plus 2. In the second 2 terms, negative 5 is the greatest common factor. So you factor out the negative 5. Now, what's going to be left over? Well, you're going to have a positive x, and then when you factor the negative 5 out of this negative 10, you're left with a positive 2. And you notice the 2 parentheses in red are the same. And in order for factor by grouping to work, your 2 parentheses must be the same. So now, factoring out the x plus 2, what's left over? The x minus 5. I usually get asked, can this be rewritten as x minus 5 times x plus 2? Absolutely, because multiplication is commutative. You can change the order. All right, here. If you're looking at the first 2 terms and then the second 2 terms, there is no greatest common factor in the first 2 terms. So you need to do some rearranging. And you can rearrange this however you want. So let's begin by interchanging these 2 middle terms. And we'll rewrite this as 2a squared minus 2ax minus 3bx plus 3ab. Now, there is a greatest common factor in the first 2 terms, a 2 and an a. So we'll have 2a times a minus x. Now, in the second 2 terms, there is a negative 3b, and what's left over? X minus a. Now, the 2 terms are not exactly alike. What's written in red is different. So does that mean factor by grouping doesn't work? Not necessarily. You could try and rearrange these terms in another order, or you may notice that between the a minus x and the x minus a, they differ by a factor of negative 1. So we're going to end up factoring out a negative 1 also from this second parentheses. The x will become negative, the a will become positive. And now these 2 factors are the same. So we end up with an a minus x is the common factor, then times 2a, and now your negative 1 times your negative 3b will be positive 3b. So you can check that by foiling.